This weekend marks two very important holy days in the traditions of two faith beliefs. The first from Judaism. Today marks the end of the season of Passover, the freedom of the Hebrew people from slavery in Egypt. The second from Christianity is Easter, the day that Christians believe that Jesus, who had been executed on the cross a few days earlier, rose from the dead. What is significant about both of these events is the shift from not letting anything, not even death, hold a person prisoner. And yet, when we look at both of these events, something tragic had to happen before freedom could happen. From the Pharaoh of Egypt being offered the chance after chance to release the prisoners, his stubbornness and constant refusal led to the deaths of many of his people before he finally allowed the Hebrews to leave Egypt. And even then, he didn't learn his lesson, sending his army out to try and bring them back, leading to even more deaths. And if we look at the starkness of Jesus' death, we're looking at a person who many would say was accused unjustly of crimes he didn't commit and was silenced in order to simply get him out of the way. Nevertheless, even death wasn't able to silence him. And regardless of what each of us may believe, his name and mission are still being talked about today. Both of these stories teach us something important, and that is the need to find our freedom and not let our captors, those things that try and keep us prisoner, stop us from living our life. Not the lives that our captors want for us, but the lives that we want for ourselves. Both of these stories also teach us of the resilience of the human spirit. That even when we fall into the traps that our captors try and hold us in, once we become aware of a tangible source of hope in our lives, we gain the ability to rise up and seek to reach towards that hope. Although with a humble reminder that the hope we seek to live into will not have that familiarity that the old life had. We have to learn how to live a new normal, just as the Hebrew people did, and just as the earliest followers of Jesus did. It's quite clear to recognize the things that have been keeping us captive, and even to recognize that sometimes we have become so familiarized with those things that are our captors, that they feel comfortable. And like the Hebrews fresh out of Egypt, or the followers of Jesus right after he died, felt confused as to what they would be handling next, where would they be heading next. What do we do when our entire life is turned on its head? So what are our captors? Maybe it's substances, alcohol, depression, trauma, anxiety, it could be fear, amongst many other things. When our captors try and take over our lives, we might fall into behaviors that take us away from ourselves. We might become resentfully compliant, or lying, or manipulating, blaming, self-sabotage, or seeking to control others. Maybe doing these things out of a sense of fear, and especially if we're family members, we're so afraid sometimes that something might happen to our loved one, that fear keeps us hostage. All in all, we end up being held hostage by something that ultimately ends up feeling familiar, yet is ultimately toxic for us and the people around us. So we need to learn how to find our freedom and live our lives. How many of us have felt isolated or misunderstood due to these substances or behaviors or other areas in our lives that have held us hostage? How many of us have really good friends who we love and who love us, but we also know we can never talk to about these struggles because they may judge us or simply not understand. When we're in a space of isolation with the people around us, we feel that they won't understand us or what we're experiencing. It leads us away from the things that we might have enjoyed as we continue to pull ourselves away and isolate. Finding our freedom and living our lives can cause us to question, what might that even look like? I remember having family members talk to me about how strange it feels going out to dinner with friends they had met in their own recovery programs and not feeling that they had to worry about their loved one who at that time was safely in treatment. Going out to dinner feeling so strange to them, yet was something so normal. But they were, for the first time in a long time, able to find others to connect with. Similarly, for those in treatment or early recovery experiencing potential unfamiliarity about not having the beverage of choice with a particular meal, or feeling uncomfortable emotions come up for the first time without their maladaptive coping strategies to try and numb those emotions out. This may also feel unfamiliar or uncomfortable as they seek to make those shifts in their own behaviors, leading to a sense of freedom that also might feel strange at first. When it comes to finding our freedom and living our lives, how many of us want to take our lives back? I mean, ultimately, many of you are here because you do want to find your freedom and once more live into your life, so that you've taken this momentous first step towards that goal. A quote attributed to Martin Luther King Jr. reads, "Freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed." Substance and alcohol use disorders and other conditions do not want to let go of their grip on you and will sometimes try and take you back into their captivity, especially if you're having a bad day. To use the Passover story as an example, at those times of confusion or frustration or times when you're not feeling comfortable with yourself, it'll try and tell you, remember when you were back in Egypt? It wasn't all bad. Just come back and things will be different, better, or at least okay. But when you get back, you will still be captive to your oppressor, and you will soon realize that things will not be different, will not be better, and will not be okay. So in this time, the season of new beginnings, of rebirth, we can find, or rather take back, our freedom and live our lives. Now let's look at what we need to do to release ourselves from our captors. And the first thing that we need to do, what I mentioned earlier, is recognize what we want. Not what our captors want, but what we want. Two of the readings that we had before today's message are about cleaning, including cleaning to find some treasures that were lost. And to some degree, what we need to do is spring clean our lives. A quote by Steve Maraboli reads, "It's time for a spring cleaning of your thoughts. It's a time to stop just existing. It's time to start living." Now, you may have heard about the book Chicken Soup for the Soul. Well, I'm talking more about creating an attitude of feng shui for the soul. I need to look at ourselves and really dig into every corner to find those proverbial dust bunnies hiding out and trying to take up space in our lives so that our energy and our desire to live rather than simply exist can flow freely and not be held back by those things that clutter up our lives and keep us stuck in captivity. An area of growth is when we can learn how to be open and honest about those hidden corners in our lives, the shadow side of us, the part that we feel we need to hide because we fear others won't accept us if they see our flaws, those scars, those wounds. Becoming willing to share these parts of ourselves out loud with the people who do understand this can help us find a sense of grace that we may never feel within ourselves. And simply thinking about things isn't the same as practically doing them. Case in point, the 12 and 12 rightly says, until we actually sit down and talk aloud about what we have hidden for so long, our willingness to clean house is still largely theoretical. It's important for us to learn how to be willing to come to accept even the scars, the woundedness, and the flaws, or else those things or behaviors that hold us hostage will continue to use those areas of woundedness to try and get us to return to it. As the saying goes, we're only as sick as the secrets we keep. When these secrets are out in the open, when we have done our spring cleaning, our captors no longer can use those things against us because we have received a sense of grace. We have been heard and met in the space that we are in by others. When we hold on to our secrets, our flaws, and our woundedness, while they remain simply in our heads and body memory and not shared with trusted folk who may have been in our shoes, the feeling of shame or guilt that substances, alcohol, or behaviors hold over us can continue to hijack our thoughts, once more leading us back to those unhealthy substances and behaviors. So if we truly want to find our freedom and live our lives on our terms, there's a need to speak our truth aloud to people who have walked our walk, so that we no longer take the risk of falling into isolation, shame, or the other behaviors or emotions that our captors want to try and place on us. We cannot do this journey alone. The Hebrew people were on this journey together through the good times and the tough times. The experiences that they were faced with were shared experiences, and this matters. Whether you're a patient, alumni, or family member, there will be people in our lives who will not understand us and what we're going through, and maybe some of those people will be our dearest friends or family members. But there are also people who have walked in our shoes, felt the shame or the isolation or the denial of their own captivity, and therefore can reach out a hand and help us up out of our captivity. A quote I love and have shared many times in the past comes from Ron Johnson from the Samaritan Center, and is taken from his article called Bound by Brokenness. The quote in this article reads, "In many of our communities, even acknowledging brokenness is not welcome or safe. To expose vulnerability is to invite judgment, risk shame, or fear standing out as the only one. Our fear that no repair is possible is real. Some brokenness can literally destroy us. For some, counseling is one of the few places where those fractures are felt and where that brokenness is bared. At such times, I recall it often the difference between suffering which destroys us and suffering which transforms us begins with the presence of a caring, thoughtful other who is willing to acknowledge that brokenness with us. Again, that last part reads, at such times, I recall that often the difference between suffering which destroys us and suffering which transforms us begins with the presence of a caring, thoughtful other who is willing to acknowledge that brokenness with us. What do we need to do then? When someone reaches out their hand to help us up, we need to reach back and let them help us. To recognize that these people actually can help us to spring clean our lives and find our freedom. That they may be able to shed some light on what we're experiencing, normalize it, and help us begin to reclaim what we may have lost during our captivity, or even find new things, new interests or hopes or friendships, or even potentially a new sense of purpose for us to live into. So where do we find such people? Well, here for a start. I frequently hear from the folks I meet with that before coming to treatment, they felt like the only person going through what they were experiencing, the only person stuck in their captivity. But since being here, they have met people who get them, who they recognize can understand what they are experiencing. There are a number of different resources out there where you can find people who can be a support system to you, as well as recognize that you can support them too. We're also talking about programs such as 12-Step or SMART Recovery, Dharma, Life Recovery, and many, many others. We become who we surround ourselves with. It's another phrase I like to say. We become who we surround ourselves with. And any recovery community is about the people who have a shared life experience. If you're a family member, you may consider going to a family support group, and Caron has a family support groups as well, where the point of it is to make connections to any friend or family of a person living with a substance or alcohol use disorder, or who is on their own recovery journey. Wherever you find people who have a shared experience with you, you will find a connection, meaning, and therefore hope. So the question remains, are we ready to make the decision to find our freedom and live our lives? When it comes down to it, are we ready to seek freedom from any habit, use disorder, behavior, or other areas that have held us captive? Are we willing to get back to the joy of actually living, not just existing? Are you ready to make a pact with yourself to take back your freedom and take back your life? What a better time than now to make the choice to reclaim your life, to turn over that new page and to start writing a new chapter of your book, the chapter on reclaiming your freedom and living your life. What better time, what better season than the season of rebirth, the season of being freed from captivity, to choose to release yourself from the things that have held you back for far too long. And so, how will you choose to find your freedom and live your life today and in the coming days, weeks, months, and years? Take some time to think about it. And then, in the immortal words of Nike, just do it. No more holding back. No more doing what your substance or alcohol use or fear or trauma or other struggle has tried to hold you prisoner wants you to do. Be bold, reach out, and live into your freedom. Amen.